This shit means something to me, man.
Sirius and Orion have been out for a while now. Since their release, there's been a lot of opinions on them. Most of them have been mixed, and for me, they have a lot of problems, but they also work in almost all the content Warframe has to offer. For them being called the 2-in-1 frame, no offense Equinox and Sevagoth, their concept for fighting over the dominance of control is very interesting to me, along with how they have a lot of space motifs going on with them. But knowing what we do, there's a lot of potential that these two frames can do in general. And I've compiled a lot of thoughts that I believe can make them play better and also just look cooler in general. So here are my ideas for the two brothers that are the lethal protectors of the Origin system. Before I go further into this, I just want to make a small disclaimer. I am not a game designer by any means. So anything that I do say that seems unbalanced, it probably is pretty unbalanced in general, as any number tweaks in Warframe can literally go from doing 2 damage to a level 2 Grenier to literally turning Captain Boar's nuts into a small pile of goo. I have to give credit where credit is due. DE is the main people who actually come up with these ideas in the first place, and I'm just making add-ons to their already existing idea. Anywho, any of these changes that I do bring up can either be applied to their base kit or can just be augments later in the future. Starting off, we have both Sirius and Orion's first ability. Both of these are just using their size in unique ways, and in general, I don't really need to do too many changes to how they already work. I want to do some synergies along with their second abilities. For Sirius's case, if Orion activates Astral Shell and you use Sirius's first ability, there will be a clone that throws out another scythe along with Sirius. Since in my opinion, the amount of burn procs that you can get on the first ability is a lot, having another clone do it will just double the damage in general. For Orion's first ability, while Jadestar's is active, Orion's first will now also deal an expedite suffering of any DOTs on the target. Considering that these two abilities are going to be the ones you're going to be spamming throughout most of the playtime you do on these guys, I wanted to make them a lot more impactful during normal gameplay. Since the rest of the abilities are very duration based and you're going to be spamming these a lot, I wanted to make it so that you can just specifically build around just these two first abilities. Now, everything I'm about to say with Jadestar's and Astral Shell will not be applied to the Helmuth one, since if they were, we would probably have to nerf them again. For Sirius, Jadestar's will now also apply status vulnerability. It's essentially the Tau status effect, just on an ability this time, and it'll keep all the same properties that Jadestar's has, like doing it on any type of hit, such as abilities and also weapons. Considering that you can have Jadestar's always active along with Astral Shell, having Sirius throw out his first ability to do an immense amount of status effects. Comboing it with Orion's first ability, you'll be able to detonate all of them at once. And speaking of Orion, with his Astral Shell and Jadestar's, they'll both be able to influence their Celestial Clash. More on that in the Celestial Clash segment. Now onto their third abilities, which in my opinion I think need the most touch-ups since they're kind of clunky in my opinion. For Sirius's case, Light Sanctuary is very mediocre in both its effects, its range, and the fact that it has to build up in duration in order to reach its maximum range in general. The revive effect is pretty nice, but considering that most of the time you're not going to be dying, especially in squads, and playing these two, you're practically immortal, it's kind of really hard to utilize it. So the changes that I'm going to be making are pretty simple. Instead of it growing over time, costing half the duration, anytime you kill an enemy, it'll increase the range of it. You'll instantly also get the damage reduction up to an extended cap to 90%. This is because I think 75% on a damage reduction skill isn't really useful. Sure, it could stack with other ones, but Sirius and Orion don't have another damage reduction skill. So using it by themselves doesn't really do much. And like I said earlier, they aren't really gonna die. And if I really wanted to add some more spice to it, because like any supportive ability, slapping on gaining Overguard on it will just make it better. And now for Orion, the Black Hole or Event Horizon will not move as much as it does right now. You'll still be able to move it around with Sirius's and Orion's first abilities, but it will more or less stay in place. similar to Nias's Larva. However, since I'm going to be keeping the little lower range on its pulling effect, we're going to make it more of a damage ability. Basically, any damage that is done in the black hole to any amount of enemies, it'll absorb that damage dealt, and then later on it'll pull in more enemies as it's about to explode. Then it'll use all of the scale damage it absorbed as a giant red crit explosion. If you do just want to leave it out there or not use it as a grouping tool to kill enemies, it'll also constantly deal slash procs, giving you the giant explosion effect regardless. I want the third abilities for the brothers a lot more synergized without having a literal status effect tied to them, unlike their second and first abilities, where you'll pull in enemies into the black hole while also being in Light Sanctuary, so you can benefit from both of the buffs. Excluding Celestial Clash, I think you can play the brothers without even using it, since I already made it so that the first abilities will do a lot of damage by themselves and also have a lot of util along with your weapons. Along with this, Jade Stars and Astral Shell are now basically your bread and butter for both living and dealing a lot more damage with everything I mentioned earlier. The main reason why you would want to play the brothers in general is because of their fourth ability, Celestial Clash. In my opinion, Celestial Clash is visually the coolest looking ability in Warframe, and I wanted to do it justice. With the new buff they added to Celestial Clash, having the heat proc and slash proc on any damage from the brothers, it's really not needed for any of these changes, but I felt like adding a little creative spin to it. So each time one of the little stars on the side menu are consumed, it'll proc Jade Stars and Astral Shell's new effect applied to Celestial Clash. If a Sirius star is used, it'll use the Jade Stars variant, where anytime enemies are hit by the Sirius Clash, they'll be inflicted with the Judgment status effect from Jade. Not a literal one, but basically just making it have a literal blast proc, but on a much bigger scale. Essentially, it'll double dip on its damage if more enemies are closer to each other, similar to how Sephiroth's nuking works. An explosion will happen around the target, which will also deal damage to other enemies near them, and that enemy will also be hit by that same explosion, dealing the same damage to the first enemy. The more Sirius stars that are used during the Celestial Clash, Jade Stars will enhance the effect by making the explosion bigger. For Astral Shell's case, any time an Orion star is used, the damage that was dealt in that clash will now be pulsated once. However, the more Orion stars that are used, they'll now be pulsating even more and more. So if you use 3 Orion stars during your whole Celestial Clash, there will be 3 pulses of your damage. Now, I wanted to also add a new part to the final cinematic explosion Celestial Clash does. See these 2 little stars and black holes in this final segment of the little animated short that we got for Sirius and Orion? We're going to be using these as a reference. We're going to be separating the little image here, with the green parts being Sirius and the red parts obviously being Orion. And with these separated, we're going to also be tying them into their third abilities. For Sirius's case, if you end the Celestial Clash with Sirius as the final star, any Light Sanctuary that is currently up will do a giant star ripple effect, basically doing a giant explosion in a plus-size pattern. And any enemy hit during that giant stream of damage, it'll reap their defenses and apply it to all allies. Any shields, any armor, any override, etc., all that will be applied to your allies. This could also even extend to like Eximus abilities, similar to how Hounds can have something similar. And for Orion's case, if you end the Celestial Clash with an Orion star active, you'll basically make your black hole turn into a quasar. These pillars of light will constantly pulse out damage, similar to how Astral Shell was working previously. And if you do end the Celestial Clash with Orion, the black hole will be moved to the point of detonation you aim at with your Celestial Clash. I'm not sure if it would be helpful for Sirius's case if Light Sanctuary moved, as I would imagine you'd be putting it on like a defense target or something, so that's why I didn't include that part. With all these changes to Celestial Clash, I don't even think the previous damage buff might not even be needed anymore, especially with the stuff I just said with like having Judgment and damage pulsating. I think the damage part is pretty much covered, especially if you have a decent star combination, where Sirius and Orion's Astral Shell and Jade Star's effects will constantly be proccing, basically. And with the newly added effects at the end of Celestial Clash, I think it's safe to say this move is pretty much living up to the fame and name it had during that cinematic. I've been playing these two frames a lot since their initial release, and I've been having the most fun with them since any new frame, really. Not to say that the new releases were bad per se, it's just I haven't felt much uniqueness with a frame as much as these two have been. Overall, they're just pretty fun, and I like how swapping between the brothers are. It feels nice and fluid. The reason why I even made this video in the first place is because I'm passionate about these guys and I want them to succeed. Of course, any Warframe is meta as long as you put enough effort and time into it, but I wanted these guys to live up to their hype that they had when they were shown. And also, there's no bias whatsoever, but I really like space, and they had the constellation stuff going on. They literally have a black hole for crying. What my aim was to do with this mini potential rework or augment ideas really was just to make it so that you have multiple playstyles offered to you. You could focus primarily on the brothers' first ability, or primarily focusing on their thirds, or even just using the Celestial Clash. So hopefully any of these ideas either gave you an inspiration to make some of your own for these two guys, or maybe someone at D is actually looking at this and they might actually invest some time into making, I don't know, maybe at least like Sirius and Orion's first abilities being able to pogo off each other, or at the very least, maybe at least one augment.